Welcome to Epic Dream Music, a podcast about the hybrid universe between electronic music and cinematic music, between the waking world and the sleeping world. Lay back, relax, and enjoy the show. This is the music of our dreams.
Hello. Welcome to the first episode of Epic Dream Music. I am Caleb, and I'm here with my beautiful co-host, Alex.
What's going on? You're beautiful as well, based off of dog's taste and legs.
That's an inside joke that no one else will get, but that's okay. We're just going to leave it there. Alex is calling in from afar using Zoom, so please forgive any discrepancy in audio quality. This is our first episode, man. This is exciting. So we thought the best place to begin and start this podcast would be to talk about ourselves. Humble brag. This is we just had a release, actually, our third release, and at this point, people may not know who we are yet, so we just thought that this interview style podcast, the first episode would be good to just kick it off by explaining who we are as a duo, and we'll just go from there. So, Alex, who is Dreamoir, and how did they get that ridiculous name? I guess it kind of, I guess I should be the one really to kick that off, because it wasn't always a duo. It started out with just me. But before we get into that, I want to know how you first got into music.
So I'll probably keep this shorter and sweeter, but basically, I tried playing the flute when I was in like third grade. Quit that really quickly, and then I got really into music. Like this weird European electronic techno, whatever. I don't even think it had a name. It was just this weird internet, like early internet techno stuff you could find on wherever. And I would download all of it. I could download it via LimeWire and just listen to it all day, every day.
Oh, LimeWire.
LimeWire.
Oh, man, that's taking me back. Anybody else remember a LimeWire?
Yeah, and it would take like days to download these songs. But once I got them downloaded, I would just listen to them over and over and over again. And it was great because, you weren't hearing them anywhere else. They weren't on the radio. Nobody else knew about them. So it was just me and my weird music. And I was in my own little world with that for years. And when it's a funny story, when I got a little bit older, I think I was in like my first year of high school, and I was still really into this stuff. And I had to get my wisdom teeth taken out. And when I came home from getting my wisdom teeth taken out, I was all messed up. My mouth was numb. I was drooling. I was still coming off the anesthesia and painkiller high. And I sat down and we had a Mac. It was like a new family computer, and it had GarageBand on it. And I sat down and realized I could try to make something. And funny enough, I was still in the weird altered state after surgery. I started making music, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I ended up with a song. And I called it Euphoria, and I thought it was amazing. I thought like I was going to be this super famous person for this one song, and it ended up being horrible, in hindsight. But and it's still around. Like I could find it, send it to you. But that was the first thing I ever made. And then after that, I went to GarageBand every day, and I make music every day. I took a class in high school about like mixing, and I forget what DAW we used, but it was not good. And that was okay, but I already knew everything that they taught us in there anyways, just from, teaching myself at home. And then I kind of laid off. I got to college. I kind of laid off a little bit. I realized there was this huge explosion of electronic music hitting the United States, which, before it was all like European stuff. And I thought it was amazing. Like I wanted to be a part of that. So then I started making like this progressive house type stuff and got really into that for a couple of years. And then around like 2014 or 15, I got burnt out from it. And I started getting more into, like, I've always loved cinematic music. I've always listened to the trailers. I remember when I was like 5 or 6, we went on a family road trip to Georgia from Massachusetts, which is, we somehow dragged that out for like 2 or 3 days. And I remember I had a Star Wars Episode 1 soundtrack CD. And I played it over and over and over again the whole road trip.
Episode 1.
Episode 1, and it was an amazing score. Like, that was probably, I consider that John Williams' best work with Star Wars was Episode 1.
Yeah, that Duel of the Fates.
Yeah, it was all amazing. I don't know. And anytime, like, my dad always had me watching like these really epic movies growing up. Like, he's like such a sucker for the epic movies, and they always had amazing soundtracks. Whether it was like James Horner or Hans Zimmer or whatever. And so I just would always listen to that stuff. And when I get to that point where I was burnt out with like EDM and stuff, I started. I realized I could, with Contact and sample libraries, I could actually make some pretty decent orchestral arrangements and stuff. And I had no idea I could do that without like hiring a whole orchestra and stuff. So that was so exciting. Only thing is using that stuff opposed to just like VSTs and everything. The memory was a nightmare on my computer or my MacBook. So I had to figure out all these things. And anyways, I ended up making that stuff for a couple of years, and that was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. But then 2016 came along. I heard Millennium's Afterlife sitting at a fire one night, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! What is this?" And then I dove deep into that, and Millennium inspired me to come back to EDM in this different way, and totally different from like the 2012 type of stuff. And then I launched the Silva project, and I started making music that was kind of uplifting in that way. I don't really know the genre you'd classify it as, but anyways, got to did that for a few years, but I always wanted to make it more cinematic, and that brings us to where we are now.
Awesome. And for those who don't know, the Silva project is still a thing. It's still out there. You can search it up. It's spelled S1LVA, not SI. Look it up. It's more of like it's kind of getting into the pop EDM a little bit. So if that's your thing, check them out.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me get this straight. You made your first ever song, the first song you ever made in EDM. Was called Euphoria. You made it in a state of euphoria, but it was because of wisdom teeth anesthesia and not the drugs usually associated with this type of music.
Exactly. Yeah. It was. It was. Like I said, I have it, and I'll probably send it to you just so you can laugh and keep it for your records.
Oh man, we'll put it in the Dreamoir archives. Let's see what happens.
Humble beginnings.
Yeah, for real. So I've been doing music since I was 17, which I'm 29 now, so it's been a while. And I first got into it not in electronic music at all. It was the singer-songwriter thing. So I started playing guitar around 17, and with that came songwriting. So I just did the whole singer-songwriter thing, played around at local bars, local clubs, and did that for a while. And then I went to school for music and got my music degree. But while I was in school, I found out about EDM. Apparently, I had missed the whole EDM electronic music wave thing that was going around while I was in high school. And I don't know why or how that happened, but I completely was totally unaware. So in college, I heard, very similar to you, this is where our stories get similar. I heard Illenium's album Awake. So you heard the first album, I heard the second album, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Because by this point, so I've always been inspired by cinema and film and the music they use in film. It's highly emotional, and that's kind of, even when I was a singer-songwriter, I wrote in that style, sort of. So when I heard Illenium's album, I was like, oh man, this is awesome. What kind of music is this? I want to make this. So then I went down the YouTube rabbit hole and bought Ableton and taught myself how to make electronic music. Actually, no, I started with Logic Pro. I didn't start with Ableton.
Oh, I should include also that after GarageBand, I transitioned to Logic Pro. I didn't switch to Ableton until like 2017.
Ah, nice.
So I was also a Logic guy.
Oh, yeah. Nice. So I used Logic, and I had a couple of film scoring projects before I really got into EDM. And then I moved to Ableton, and I'll never look back just because I love the way Ableton is organized. But I digress. So, yeah, so then I started making EDM in this style of Millennium, but then I began to infuse more cinematic elements than what he typically was doing at the time. I know now he's more EDM pop, but at the time it was more cinematic. So I wanted even more of that cinematic element. So that's where I started, and because I changed genres so drastically, I also rebranded myself, came up with a different name, which was Dreamoir. Caleb, how did you come up with that ridiculous name? Well, everything else that I thought of was taken. So I had to come up with something truly unique. Before I was a music major, I was a psychology major. I've always been interested in dreams and just the psyche and all of that stuff. And I was searching for words to mash that up with this idea of dreams. And dreams are interesting and fascinating in that they're completely different worlds. They could be anything, right? And I liked that idea being applied to music. I could make different sounding music to represent different worlds. I've always been into fantasy, so it just kind of worked. So I was searching for words to combine dream with, and I like the word noir, like film noir, and that whole style that's super moody. And so I just smashed them together and made Dreamoir. Turns out it was not taken anywhere online, so I just hit the ground running with it.
Isn't that the hardest? I think that's an overlooked thing about trying to become like an artist of some sort. Is not only do you have to create the music that's at that quality level to release to the world, but then you have to figure out, okay, what is my name and what is my brand? Because there's a lot of pressure. It's like so much stress when you're trying to figure it out, because the moment you pick it and you choose that and you release, it's going to be hard to switch that later on.
Yeah, it's like, what do you want to be known as?
Yeah, it's so much pressure going into that decision. I've spent so much time trying to figure out because you're right, every name is taken. Like everything out there is taken. And at the time when I picked Silva, I was like, well, screw it. Other people do this. They'll just use their last name and they'll put a number in there, like Blau. But when I chose Silva S1LVA, there was nobody else out there. Sure enough, a year in, there's another Silva with a 1. And now our profiles get mixed up all the time. He's a rap hip hop artist. It's crazy.
Welcome to the music industry.
Yeah.
So a little history, since once Dreamoir was a thing and started, I originally had an EP lined up and I was just going to self-release it. Well, a guy that I worked with at the time, he had been riding the EDM wave for a while. He was into it, and he knew somebody that was a DJ. And so I was like, oh, hey, can you introduce me? So he introduced me to that guy. That guy knew another guy, and that other guy ended up having connections with a smaller record label, but the record label was focusing on this cinematic style of electronic music. And so I end up getting my music released by New Dawn Collective, which is the name of the label. And they are a fantastic label. They loved what I was doing, but they only wanted one of my 4 songs at the time. So we ran with that one as a single release. And it did pretty good for someone who had never released music publicly before. I was pleased with it. And then we rode that release wave for a while. And one day I got an Instagram message from this Alex guy claiming to be Silva. And I was like, who is this? Who is this chump? He was like, hey, bro, I like your stuff. You want to collab? It wasn't like that. If you're an artist and you know what I'm talking about, like, you get these requests all the time. But Alex, I'll let you explain how you kind of came across that.
Yeah, I remember I was working out and I had SoundCloud on. I usually don't listen to SoundCloud, but I had it up for whatever reason. And SoundCloud will just throw like random songs in your feed if you're letting it just continue from song to song. And it threw up your song until Death Do Us Part. And I remember listening. I'm like, oh, this is interesting because it starts out with that cinematic intro, and I kept it on. And as it progressed, I realized that it wasn't just a cinematic thing because I listen to a lot of trailer music, especially when I work out. And as it progressed, it was also fused with EDM, and that's when I was like, well, wow, this is really interesting. This is like exactly what I would love to do, but at that point, I'd kind of boxed myself in with where I was going with Silva. I don't know. I was like, this is great. I want to collab with this guy. So then I reached out to you on Instagram, and yeah, we realized we had a lot in common. We were the same age. We were only like a state apart. You could be anywhere in the world, and there you were, really close to me. So yeah, it was like the easiest collaboration ever to at least get started.
Yeah, so Alex reached out to me on Instagram, and we just started. I agreed to do a collab, and like you said, we just hit it off and started making something, and that something turned into our second release, or the second Dreamoir release, which was Whispers. And Whispers was released as a collaboration between Dreamoir and Silva. So Dreamoir was still a solo project at this time, but Whispers just performed leaps and bounds better than Until Death Do Us Part. And that exposure and that combination of our skill sets and our styles ended up vibing really well with the community that listened to us. And we got a lot more exposure from Spotify, the algorithms, and also YouTube promo channels. So once we started to see the performance of Whispers, I started to consider, well, maybe we should work together more often, and this shouldn't just be a one-off collaboration. So I invited Alex to become a part of the Dreamoir brand, and now we are a duo. And as a duo, we've released our third commercial track, Worth It, which is performing pretty good so far. So, we'll see how that goes over the course of the next few months, years to come, but it's doing pretty good. The brand is growing stronger. We're getting a pretty solid fan base. So that's where we're at right now, and that's kind of where Dreamoir came from. So for those who don't know, Alex, let's attempt to describe our style.
The style is, I feel like it's fluid, and we don't try to make a specific genre, but I would say, melodic dubstep kind of fits in there a little bit, blended with like hybrid trailer music, where you have like these aggressive sounds and sound design. It doesn't fit the traditional format of a dubstep song, because there's this long intro and there's a verse, but then there's a build and then another build. And then it doesn't follow a traditional format. So it's pretty unique, I would say. And I think we both determined that cinematic bass is a good word for it.
Yeah, so we were talking, and we were also talking with the label, and we're trying to, I guess you could use the word pioneer. I don't know if that's too pretentious. I'm not trying to be pretentious, but we seem to have latched on to this niche audience. Everybody that's heard the song and commented about it, they're like, oh man, I've been looking for this combination of cinematic music and EDM, and I love what you're doing. So, because of that reaction, we decided, okay, well, maybe this could be a new subgenre. Maybe we could be one of the ones that kind of kick it off, because there's not many people that do it. We've connected with a few people on Instagram who've reached out to us that also are trying to do something similar, but we're getting some pretty good exposure. So we decided to try and name the subgenre. Anybody who's in the EDM family knows that there's like 50,000 subgenres of EDM. So let's just add this one to the list at the very bottom. So yeah, cinematic bass.
And also, we should add that, cinematic is used, it's thrown a lot. That term is thrown around a lot in EDM, to describe things. I mean, people say like Odessa is cinematic, but that means so many different things. And they vary so much. Like our cinematic is very, like I said, hybrid trailer music. So you go and listen to like hybrid trailer music. That's what we mean by cinematic, opposed to like some strings or like a choir just underneath all this electronic stuff. I would say like our ratio of cinematic to electronic is like 60 to 70 cinematic, and then like 30 to 40 electronics, which is not a ratio you'll find in any other EDM, cinematic EDM subgenres, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of brings us into our creative process. If you want to talk about that a little bit more, we have, so the cinematic part of everything, that us bringing elements in from trailer music. Yeah, we bring a lot of them, and we basically are trying to make the track as emotional as possible, and also creating this story out of sound. So taking the listener on this journey, and just making building this whole world out of sound, was kind of the vision for Dreamoir, and that's the cinematic part of it. It's almost like a sound movie, if you will. So our creative process, it changes for every track. We're still trying to iron out the details. I know Whispers was a bit of a rough ride, just because we were trying to figure out how do we do this when we're not in the same location, and sending project files back and forth. But with Worth It, it was a lot smoother, and mainly because you had already had most of the song completed by this point, and we just took it and made it more cinematic and fitting for Dreamoir, because it was originally going to be for the Silver project, I think.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. And then if that had happened, it probably would have just been another, standard release that didn't do amazingly well, but, did okay. But doing it this way, I think, was a much, much better route. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Whispers was a bit of a nightmare with trying to figure out how's the best way to do this. And if there's anybody out there that's also thinking about doing this with somebody that's remote, I don't recommend doing sending project files back and forth unless you have every single plugin that's the same. Because if one of you is missing it, then you're like, well, wait, why doesn't this sound like what he just made or what he just sent me? And it's because you're missing half the stuff that the other one is using on that end. So then you got to bounce everything out to audio, and then it's just, you can't change anything. It's a mess. So
yeah, so typically, let's break it down. So this is how we do it now. We've ironed it out for anybody else who's struggling with working, over a distance, without being in person in a studio together. One of us will come up with an idea, and then once it's solid enough to where the other one can take it and do something with it, we'll either send the audio. I think what we settled on is we basically flatten the whole thing, bounce it out to a single audio file, send it over to the other person, and then the other person will bring that single audio file into Ableton or whatever DAW you're using and add stuff underneath it or on top of it. And the stuff that we add is really just kind of ideas back and forth. But I think how we're operating right now is, it seems like one person is in control of the whole project file, and then the other person with those single flattened audio tracks will send back those ideas, and the person who's in control of the audio file will add the ideas in using their instrumentation. And if there's any instrumentation that they don't have, then the other person can bounce it out to audio and just send them the stem files. Same thing with any MIDI that they need. So we've kind of got that system worked together, and we keep going back and forth like that until we reach the end of the song. And so for our intros, our long cinematic intros, it's one of the things that makes Dreamoir unique, is we have these like minute long sound stories basically. So for things like that, let's just take Worth It for an example. So Alex had a lot of Worth It already created, but Alex tends to make drops really well, and pretty quickly. So he'll have a drop created, but let's say the song still needs an intro. Well, he'll send me the single audio file, and then I'll build out the intro and flatten the intro to a single audio file and send it back to him. And then he just adds that into the project. So we do this back and forth until we get a finished product.
Yeah. So there's like a master of the track. With Whispers, it was you. With Worth It, it was me. And I think that works the best, because if you're both trying to be in control of the overall project, it's a mess. But if there's one person that's in control, they add and adjust and do the mix and all that, then that's the best way.
Yeah, it seems to be. And it helps that we can both do everything. You know, not everybody can mix or master or whatever. So you kind of have to judge your strengths and play to your strengths here and there. But we have the same skill set, so it tends to work really smoothly and pretty easily. So let's get into, where do we get our inspiration? And we can combine that question with, what are some of the techniques or sounds that we tend to use a lot?
Yeah, so I would say I get my inspiration from anywhere and everywhere, and it's hard to come by. Like, I'm not inspired by a lot, just because a lot of stuff gets old and repetitive and sounds the same, and people just make the same thing over and over and over again. But sometimes I'll hear like a melody or something that just like is really provokes emotion, and when that happens, I usually feel inspired. So it could come from something in the EDM world, or it could come from some kind of trailer music, or maybe I'm watching a movie and the score is like really amazing, and that inspires me.
Are you inspired by those birds chirping in the background right now?
I am. It's nice. We got a nice morning here in Florida.
Why don't you go ahead and record it? We'll sample it into our next release.
Yeah, we do an uplifting song. Open it up with some birds. But yeah, where do you get inspiration?
I mean, it's similar to you. I get inspired by pretty much, it can hit, anybody that's creative knows that it can hit out of nowhere, but specifically for the style of music that we do, I tend to be inspired by film and video games and just anything that has that epic fantasy feel. That's kind of what inspires me. I know that when I'm listening to other EDM tracks from, whether it's Illenium or Seven Lions or Odessa or whatever, I tend to, in that moment, feel like I want to go make music, but it doesn't necessarily inspire me to make anything specific. I'm just like, oh man, that sounds really cool. I'm kind of in the mood. Let's go. But when I'm listening to something epic like trailer music or highly cinematic or just watching a movie or something like that, I tend to be more inspired to craft something like an actual track around an idea or come up with a story. I know for Whispers, that whole track was based on a short story that I had written. Worth It was based on the lyrical content that was written by Chandler Layton, who was the vocalist on the track. So it can come from anywhere. It just kind of hits, and it tends to hit at the most inopportune moment when you can't make music.
Yeah, there's like too many times where I've recorded myself humming in the car, and and then even if I do it well, by the time I have a chance to sit down and try to put it into the DAW, it doesn't translate as well because I forget. I'm not in that creative state I was in when I recorded it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's tricky.
So I know that one technique we use a lot, or I guess sounds. So for sounds, like we already said, we use elements from both trailer music and mainstream EDM. But for techniques, we tend to have a pretty good formula going right now. Like I said, we have that intro that's kind of a sound story. So for that, I just pull sounds from, it could be anything. It's almost like doing Foley for post-production work on film. I go look for footsteps, trees rustling, cities burning, or buildings crumbling, or whatever is fitting for the story at the time. And then we roll right into the intro. And there is a pretty standard EDM formula there. You know, we have a verse into a build up into a drop. But one thing we like to do is have several different build ups, or maybe a build up into a build up. So it's not as standard, and it kind of keeps you guessing. We also don't worry about track length. You know, we just write whatever our heart is feeling at the moment, and whatever feels right. We're not trying to fit it into a 3.5 minute radio hit. We create what we feel like needs to be created. So we try not to limit our art in that regard. So another technique that we'd like to use is having choirs layered with our super saws. That tends to, you know, I guess it just fills it out a lot more. Gives it this warmth. Anything else we tend to use a lot?
Horns, strings, ostinato patterns. The thing with this, though, I will say, is when you're trying to combine live instrumental recordings with synthesized sounds, it's hard to get them all to sound consistent, like they're all a part of the same arrangement. They're just so different. Like you pull up a patch on Serum or something, and it sounds great, pretty close to great right off the bat. However, if you have, depending on the sample library you're using, if you're trying to play horns or even drums, there's a lot of work that's going to need to be done to make those sound good. Like you gotta do a lot of work with those to make them fit in there and not have, you know, a ton of like muddiness or just sound flat. I don't know how to describe what I'm saying, but it can sound weak compared to your more synthesized sounds.
Yeah.
Or just like, let's say you're using a sample pack for like EDM drums or something, kicks and snares. Then those can sound really great, crisp, punchy. And then you use your cinematic sample library for drums, whatever it is, and it's a little bit more. It's real and it's live, but it's like a little bit more washed out and not as punchy and concise. So you kind of have to do a lot of work to get it all to fit together nicely.
Yeah.
And with the drops, especially if we're adding like horns in the drops or choir, I mean, there's a lot you got to do to make them fit without just ruining the mix altogether.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing.
Yeah. Another issue we run into is making the build-ups bigger than the drops. So by the time we get done, you know, making the build-up, regardless of which one is created first, it's always an issue. When it gets to the drop, it doesn't feel like it hits as hard because the build-up has been so epic. So you get to the drop and you're like, oh, that was something.
Right. Yeah, it's very easy to overdo it before the drop.
Yeah.
Because you can't just throw everything in the drop either. Otherwise you lose that movement and that like feeling where you want to bob your head, because now it's just a wall of sound. You don't want that.
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
It's a delicate balance. But
yeah,
we managed to achieve it by the time we get to the end and have a finished product.
It's a lot of add, take away.
Yeah, yeah.
This sounds good. Wait, too much. Take away. Yeah. Sometimes less is more. A lot of times less is more. When you hit that point and you're like, man, I don't know how to get this to sound right. Try to just mute some things. Mute a couple of things, and you'll be amazed at like how much clearer it gets, and more. You know, it doesn't need to be all these things, because chances are that at the end result, the listener's not going to hear all those things you have in there.
Yeah.
They're going to hear the main elements, and so focus on those, and they'll shine through much better.
Yeah. Another pro tip: save your biggest wall of sound for the final drop.
Yes.
Not only does it keep it fresh and exciting, but it saves the best for last and allows you to have different variations of the drop. But you're right. Yeah. Focus on what's most important to the listener, because, you know, they're not, I mean, maybe another artist might be sitting there picking apart the song, but for the most part, most people are just going to be listening to it. They're going to be listening to a groove, something they can vibe with, or something that makes them, you know, have this big emotional response to it. So, you know, it's a delicate balance against or across everything.
Yeah.
All right, what is the future of Dreamoir? Where are we going from here? So we have 3 releases. We've been on this consistent 1 release per year that we're trying to break that habit and release music a lot quicker than that. But other than that, what are some things we're planning for the future?
Definitely an EP. Trying to get that out there. Just because I think there's enough single releases now. People understand what the music is, what Dreamoir is, and now they know exactly what to expect. And if there's a following, they want more. So if we can release an EP of a few songs that are consistent with that style, I think we'll be pretty good to go. And I think we can do that relatively quickly. I think we both figured out the best methods on how to work efficiently. And we've gotten a lot of major life events out of the way that have kind of bogged us down the past 2 years, and COVID too. That was a big thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like a major pandemic smashed the world, brought down Thor's hammer.
Yeah. So, you gotta give us some leeway there. And trailer music. Like, I know you and I both love trailer music, and there's nothing we'd want more than getting some of those out there, and seeing our music in a big time movie trailer, game trailer, whatever it is. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, so it's really pretty simple. Just we want to release an EP, and we also want to have this other side of Dreamoir that's making trailer music and trying to get those sync licenses across, whether it doesn't matter what it is, really, video games, movies, TV shows. It'd be really cool to hear your music on a major production like that. So those are kind of since the music lends itself well to trailer music, we kind of have those 2 facets of Dreamoir, and then just growing the brand in general. That's really it. All right, let's get into some fun questions here. So, Alex, why do you do what you do?
Just for the passion, love of it. You end up enjoying it so much that that satisfaction and that feeling when you can press play and listen to something you've created, hearing that back, that's like an awesome experience. At least before you get sick of it. So when like in the early moments when you initially make the overall idea, I think that is the most rewarding part. And whether you're able to make a living from music or not, I don't think it really matters, because just the satisfaction of hearing your end result and the process when things are clicking, it is like one of the funnest things to do. So just for the enjoyment, that's why I do it. Why do you do it, Caleb?
I do it because I feel like I have to. Like, I feel like, and not in a negative way, but in a positive way. I feel like as a creative, I have this need to just create, and it doesn't have to be music, but that tends to be where my talents have developed. So it often ends up being music, and I've chosen to run with that as my path. So yeah, I want to create something, and I also, I'm really into fantasy and movies and things like that, video games, especially big open world games, anything with this sweeping epic story. So all of those things kind of inspire me to create within that world or within related genres. And so because I'm a musician, it spills over into that, and I want to create something. I want to create a bigger, something that's bigger than just a song. And I also want to impact people on an emotional level. And this music is highly emotional. So we're trying to connect with the audience in that regard, which leads me to my next question. What is one message that you would give to our fans?
Thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. There was that one guy that reached out to us, said he stayed up all night waiting for the release. Like, that stuff is, it's awesome. It's awesome to see. And it's really motivating on our end to keep going. Like, reading comments where people are saying that they've either been waiting for another release, or they're so happy to see that we've got another release. There's nothing that like is a kick in the ass to get working on more music more than that. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
So that's just Big appreciation.
Yeah, I would just like to point out that it's cool to even be at a point to say that we have fans. I remember when I first started doing music, the idea of having a fan base seemed like it was so far away, something that I couldn't really achieve in any short amount of time. And we seem to have somewhat of a fan base now, and so it's kind of cathartic in a way, looking back, like, oh wow, I guess I'm here. Have we made it? Is this what making it feels like? You could define success as having people that love your music. You don't have to be a superstar. You could just have a solid group of people.
And it doesn't need to be a lot. It doesn't need to be a lot either. It could just be, a handful of people that really love your stuff, and that aren't like friends and family, but total strangers that just really love your stuff. That's like the coolest thing.
Yeah. We love you, friends and family, but you guys just don't count. Yeah. Yeah. So my message, would be the same thing basically, is just thank you for listening. We couldn't do this without you. I mean, we could, but we couldn't achieve the same amount of exposure without you guys talking about it and waiting for it. So we do this for ourselves, but we also do it for you now that you guys are on board with us. So it's really awesome to see that. All right, Alex, what's the best advice you've ever been given, and how does that apply to your music career?
So there were points where I wanted to do just music. Like I saw a lot of people that have successful people in music that said that, the way that they made it was to drop everything in their life and just go for it. And like, there's something to that. I think that that's an awesome idea. Right? You listen to enough motivational speeches and stuff where there's like a Tony Robbins clip out there where he's like, if you want to take the island, you got to burn your boats, so that you don't even have a backup or a plan B. It's the only option: succeed or sink. And so I actually did try that. I tried that when I had a nice cushion of money where I could last a little bit without a job. And I went music 100%. But I got some advice from my dad at one point, because this didn't work out. I sank. And it's possible to sink. Like you only hear the success stories. So everybody's story is different.
Yeah, not only is it possible, it's highly likely.
It's highly likely, yeah.
Maybe you should have moved to LA.
Yeah, sleep on a couch and work as a barista. But that idea, it when it doesn't pan out, I mean, not only the whole time that I was doing this, I was stressed about money. I was poor. I couldn't afford to pay my bills, my rent. And when that stuff's on your mind, you can't really focus on it. When music is your way out, you're saving grace. I mean, you're banking on it. There's too much pressure there. At least for me, there was too much pressure, and I would get stressed out. And when I wasn't coming up with good ideas, I'd get even more stressed out. And it just wasn't a good recipe. And so the advice I got from my dad was, do something else that maybe is not your passion. It's not what you love, but do something long enough to where you'll be able to then do what you love and do it so well that you're able to make a living off of it. Because dropping everything and just trying to straight up make a living off of it without any kind of support, it's not the best way to go about it. At least it wasn't for me. Works for some people, didn't work for me. So having something else, it's okay to do something else while you work on creating your music. I mean, it doesn't have to be the number one thing in your life, but ideally, eventually it maybe will be. So just kind of trusting that process, and it's okay to do other things and prioritize other things for a while you work on music on the side.
Yeah, guys, here's the thing. Never stop chasing your dreams, but also be realistic. You have to eat and do all of those things first. That comes before music. So with the internet ever expanding, it's more and more possible for just the average person living in South Carolina and Florida, which is where we live, to achieve something online just because of the reach, the communication. So keep going, keep doing what you're doing, but also take care of yourself. So my advice, or the best advice I've been given, is actually also from my dad. So shout out to dads. Way to go, dads. My advice was a phrase that my dad raised me on. It is can't, never could, and probably never will. So it's basically this idea that you can do anything you set your mind to, anything that you want to do, go ahead and do it. If you say you can't, then you probably won't, because you've already decided, by saying that, you've already decided that you can't do it. You're not good enough or whatever. It's almost like it's like imposter syndrome. So I've taken that phrase to heart and applied it to every area of my life, and music is no different. I've been doing music since I was 17, but it wasn't until I got into electronic music that I really hit my stride when it comes to making progress. So yeah, that's my advice. So again, thank you, dads.
Good dadly advice.
All right, last deep question. If you could change anything about the music industry, what would it be?
Take the people that their sole role in the music industry is to make money, and they're not artists, but they're, a lot of people that work with big labels, I guess. Traditionally within music, you had 10 songs on the radio at a time for like a year, and they basically stuff it down your throat and make you like those artists. Right now, we have 50,000 songs getting released a day on Spotify. There's no shortage of music. So why do we play only 10 songs? It's money. Money. People pay money. Big, put a lot of resources behind one artist, and they know they're going to get a return on their investment. And so they're investors, and they're suits. Like, it's cut them out of the music industry. And I don't know if it's possible. Probably not. But if I could change one thing, that's what I would try to change.
All right. If I could change one thing, it would be the way that people have historically treated artists in the industry. Ever since this became an industry, artists have gotten the raw end of the deal. They are taken advantage of, and it's not just music. Everybody loves art and wants art, but nobody wants to pay for art or support the artist. And that's always been a problem. It's still a problem. It seems to be getting better. When the internet exploded and independence became more accessible for artists, this started to change. And streaming has changed a lot of that. So now you can do everything on your own. But I would change, there's still that issue of whether it's labels or publishers or just big executives taking advantage of artists is still a problem, and that's something that I would change. And big shout out to New Dawn, our current label, the label that's released all the Dreamoir tracks so far. They treat their artists with respect, and they treat their artists like one of their own family. They're just an awesome label to be a part of. If you create music in the electronic cinematic style, and you want a label, look no further, reach out to them. They'd probably love to have you. They are the model of what I think other labels should be, and it's real simple. Just treat others the way you'd want to be treated, and respect the fact that without the artist, without art, you wouldn't have an industry. You have to have that creativity, that creation, that art to begin with. So there it is. Controversial.
Yep.
All right. Fun questions. Got 3 fun questions before we wrap this up. Who would you most like to collaborate with?
Hans Zimmer.
Oh, Hans. That's a SpongeBob reference.
That would be a fun collaboration. It'd be an interesting collaboration. I'd love to see where it would go. And I'd just like to meet him. I think that would be a dream come true.
If anybody out there knows Hans Zimmer, tell him that Dreamoir is looking for him. I'm going to have to agree. That would be a great collaboration, especially since he's such a big inspiration for both of us. If Hans Zimmer collaborated with us, I would let him take over all of the cinematic stuff, and we would just work on the EDM stuff.
Yeah, I would let him take over the whole thing.
Yeah. It would just be a Hans Zimmer track.
I'm just there to watch.
Yeah. All right. If you could open a show for any artist, who would it be?
Probably Illenium, because he's another big inspiration, and I've been to his shows, and they're amazing. It would be amazing to be at one of those shows with a role, and being able to open up for him would also be, a dream come true.
I'm gonna have to agree again with this decision. I would love to. I mean, he was an inspiration for both of us. Kind of the reason that we got into this style. So it makes sense. But yeah, I would probably choose Illenium. If not Illenium, any of the guys that have toured with him for the past several years, Said the Sky, Dabin, anybody that makes music in that style,
or Odessa, because they have really incredible live shows, and I think it'd be awesome to be a part of that.
I was gonna say Odessa just because their live shows are on another level. They're like they're more pop oriented. I don't know if we would fit the show, but I definitely would. I mean, if Odessa called me and said, "Hey, you want to open?" I'm not gonna say no.
Right.
So yeah. If I had to pick one that sits on top of the rest, though, probably Illenium, just because it would not only would it be fun, but it would be an honor to have that role in his show after being inspired so much.
I agree.
All right, last question. Are you ready for this one?
Mm-hmm.
This is probably the most important question out of the entire podcast. Do you sing in the shower?
I don't think I ever have, and I don't think I ever will, just because when I get in the shower, it's like I just reflect on everything. It's the whole day, my week, my month, my year. I'm just reflecting on everything, and I'm not usually in a energetic mood to sing. Yeah, I don't know. It's just not a place where I get the urge to sing. Do you sing?
I've been known to carry a tune, one or two, in my time in the shower.
Another question.
Yeah.
Do you hot showers or cold showers?
Oh, I'm definitely hot showers. I have taken cold showers many a time, but I do not prefer them.
Well, they say it's supposed to be a whole bunch of benefits to them.
They can keep saying that, and I'll just keep taking my hot showers.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've tried it. I don't like it.
I will say I do enjoy splashing my face with cold water. That's refreshing. Yeah, I don't enjoy the shock of a cold shower, even though it does work. It does wake you up, but it's not for me. But yeah, I don't sing in the shower very often. I whistle in the shower. Sometimes I sing, but really my shower time is where all of my ideas come. Like it's weird. I open the door of the shower, step in, and get flooded with all of these ideas. All this creativity just explodes in the shower, which is probably why our water bill has been a little higher recently.
That's the place, huh?
Yeah, that's the place. So, all right, well, this wraps up our first episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have anything else you'd like to hear, any more topics, anybody else you'd like to hear from, or just any pointers, tips, whatever, we're open to suggestions. Leave it in the comments, reach out to us on social media. Hopefully this first episode has not been too crazy. Hopefully it's just great. Hope you guys enjoyed it. So head on over to Dreamoir Music. Everywhere you go online, Dreamoir Music is the handle, the tag, the account, whatever. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Search for Dreamoir Music and you'll find us, and give us a shout out. We'd love to hear from you.
Yep. Listen to it, stream it, share it with your mom, dad, your brothers, sisters, and children.
All right, guys. Dreamoir out.